Hello, guys, and welcome back to Dots Connected. Here's what happened in the last day that you need to know. From election integrity wins to Ninth Circuit victories in Portland, child predators on big tech, and global peace deals. Let's get busy connecting some dots. Let's get started with big wins on election integrity and border enforcement, both thanks to Trump aligned officials using the tools they've been given. In Texas, Secretary of State Jane Nelson announced that more than 2,700 potential non citizens had been flagged on the state's voter rolls, including 165 in El Paso alone. This comes after Texas became one of the first states to get direct access to the federal SAVE database, which is a system for verifying immigration status. That access came from the Trump administration, of course, and it's already making a huge difference. Here's how it works. Texas ran its entire list of 18 million registered voters through SAVE. Anyone flagged has 30 days to prove they're a U.S. citizen, or they're off the rolls. Nelson called it a real game changer, and she's right. This is real election security, not smoke and mirrors, not a little Band-Aid. It's real. Meanwhile, over in Oklahoma, an ICE raid exposed something straight out of a dystopian novel. Dozens of non-citizen truckers with bogus licenses were arrested, many carrying fake CDLs issued in sanctuary states, with some licenses literally reading, "No name given" for their name. They didn't speak English and were operating 18-wheelers across the state. Does that make you feel safe? Senator Mullen confirmed the operation was carried out with the help of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who was involved directly. This was part of Operation Guardian along I-40. In just the first few hours, agents pulled over 17 semi-trucks with serious red flags, fake paperwork, no English, and drivers with no legal presence in this country. This isn't about immigration. It's about national security and dangerous gaps in our transportation system. When sanctuary states hand out licenses like candy, Oklahoma isn't going to sit back and pretend it's normal. And I would venture to say neither are the rest of the red states. Governor Stitt nailed it. If New York wants to hand out CDLs to illegal immigrants with no name given, that's on them. But the moment they cross into Oklahoma, they answer to our laws. Bottom line, these states aren't waiting for Washington to act. They're proactively doing the job themselves and proving that strong leadership backed by President Trump's policy works. Let's move on to a big legal win for President Trump. The Ninth Circuit Court just reversed a lower court ruling that blocked him from deploying National Guard troops to protect the ICE facility in Portland. Judge Karen Immergut had rejected the Guard request, claiming the president's description of Portland as war-ravaged was inaccurate. But two Trump-appointed judges on the appeals court side said she overstepped and ignored months of violent protests that had shut the facility down in the first place. They ruled the president can and should consider the full picture, not just cherry-picked data. Oregon AG Dan Rayfield now wants the full court to rehear it. But for now, this is a rare case on the Ninth Circuit backing presidential authority. Homeland Secretary Noem called it another victory for President Trump and the safety of the American people. Now, let's go across the pond for a minute because what's happening in the UK is nothing short of a national disgrace. An official inquiry into a grooming gang scandal is falling apart. Two survivors, Fiona Goddard and Ellie Ann Reynolds, just quit the government panel, calling it a cover-up in plain sight. Goddard says the inquiry is being run by the same kinds of people who helped cover up the crimes in the first place, including a police officer and a social worker as panel chairs. She pointed out that in her own 2019 trial, jurors with ties to police or social services were banned for bias, but now that same bias is apparently fine on a national inquiry panel. She also raised concerns about members' ties to the Labor Party, which matters because most of the hotspots where this mass rape and trafficking happened were Labor-run councils. And let's not forget, Keir Starmer, now Prime Minister, was in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service while many of these cover-ups were happening. Victims were ignored, labeled prostitutes, and left in danger for years because police and officials were too afraid to confront the fact that most of the abusers were Pakistani Muslim men, targeting working-class white girls. Goddard also opposed the panel's push to broaden the inquiry into other types of abuse because every time that's happened before, it's been used to bury the grooming issue entirely. Reynolds, who also resigned, said victims were kept in the dark, had their questions ignored, and were used as window dressing while the process turned into yet another whitewash. Even labor's opponents are calling it out now. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phillips said, "The government never wanted this inquiry. Now it looks like they're sabotaging it." Shadow Counselor Robert Jenrick wants a foreign judge to lead it because, in his words, every arm of the British state is implicated. This isn't just a failed inquiry, it's another example of how elites let institutions rot while innocent people pay the price. Back at home, Florida AG Uthmeyer just hit Roblox with criminal subpoenas. Not civil, criminal. He called the platform a breeding ground for predators, while children as young as 8 are being groomed. Predators use in-game currency to bribe kids into sending explicit content. Back in April, Uthmeyer launched a civil probe. What he found? No age checks, weak moderation, and company negligence. Multiple families are suing, and Uthmeyer didn't hold back. Roblox profited off of our kids while exposing them to the most dangerous harms. Now to something the media absolutely does not want you talking about because it blows their entire narrative wide open. Smartmatic. Federal prosecutors just filed a superseding indictment naming Smartmatic as a criminal defendant in a foreign bribery and money laundering case tied to the 2016 Philippine presidential election. Yeah, that is the same voting machine company suing Fox News for $2.7 billion. Here's what they're accused of: bribing Philippine election officials with over $1 million in order to secure $180 million in contracts to run the country's election. This wasn't just some rogue employees either. 3 executives were charged, including Roger Panatti, a Venezuelan co-founder of Smartmatic. And now the company itself is on the hook. But it gets worse. The indictment says Smartmatic used fake contracts, slush funds, and shell companies to launder bribe money across Asia, Europe, and South Florida. The whole operation looks like a textbook Foreign Corruption Practices Act case, and it allegedly ran from 2015 to 2018. Let's be clear. This is the same company claiming in a U.S. court that their reputation was ruined by Fox News in 2020 while they were paying bribes and laundering money just a few years prior. In a statement, Smartmatic says prosecutors have been misled by unnamed powerful interests. Of course they did. Smartmatic has deep Venezuelan roots. A former employee, speaking anonymously out of fear, recently testified that U.S. election systems can be manipulated by foreign actors. That's not a conspiracy theory anymore. That is a witness on record. And now we've got criminal indictments confirming what many of us have been warning for years. These voting machine companies are not untouchable, and concerns about election integrity, both here and abroad, are absolutely justified. This should crush Smartmatic's defamation case, because if you're caught bribing your way into election contracts, laundering the money, and getting indicted by U.S. prosecutors, you don't get to cry reputation damage. This is vindication for everyone who's raised questions on elections, especially in 2020, and were silenced about it. And finally, President Trump's push for a ceasefire in Ukraine is gaining traction, but of course, not without friction. European allies, including the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and top EU leaders, just issued a joint statement with Zelensky supporting President Trump's call for an immediate ceasefire along current front lines, but they made it clear: no recognition of Russia's territorial gains. Their line, international borders must not be changed by force. This follows a tense October 17th meeting between Presidents Putin and Zelensky in the White House, reportedly marked by shouting and frustration. President Trump had pushed for a ceasefire right now at the battle lines. Zelensky, however, still refuses to give up any territory. He's open to a pause in fighting, but only as a negotiation starter, not a concession. Meanwhile, a proposed Trump-Putin summit in Budapest is looking less certain. Despite great progress during their October 16th call, Russian officials now signal no urgency on prep talks, and Putin's ICC arrest warrant is a key logistical snag. Hungarian PM Viktor Orban is still offering Budapest as a host city, calling it an island of peace, but the EU is warning the move could undermine unity. So for now, there's support for a ceasefire, but no agreement on terms, and the summit may be on ice. All right, that concludes the second episode of Dots Connected. That's everything you need to know today. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully I'll be back with you tomorrow. However, I will say this, with the government being shut down, there's not a whole lot to report on. If I find that that's too short, I may skip a day. Thank you guys for understanding, and have a great day.